300 megabytes just of codes.
How's everyone at your abode?
Not too bad. Going to
Skip lodge tonight?
no. He's going to lodge. I got a babysitter.
Oh, it's too bad. Had to pay for one? Or?
Yeah, it's all right. We'll live.
You're talking about the ones in the,
I was gonna pay for one last night.
yeah, he cited himself, he also cited a lot of others, which I downloaded a lot of the others. But I didn't want to give you all the supporting, if you read through all the supporting information and everything else.
So he's the first himself and third person when he...
Well, that's the standard, I think, scientific.
I don't know. Well, if you're the global expert, how what else are you supposed to do?
One of the experts.
You just don't like to write on it. That's when we're the government. First except third person, then you have to go see the trains, you know.
Where'd you be in here?
Huh?
Did you visit in here?
Sure.
So I think we do have consensus now on the laptop, and so we'll go ahead and order that. And as soon as Debbie has to order it on her credit card and everything. So she's out tomorrow.
Go in the kids' paper boxes. Find something to use first. I saved all the 50 posters and after everything, and I hope my grandkids again up playing those too. And last fall, maybe last spring, 3 bucks, not see it was. I was just wondering if our youngest granddaughter, she's in kindergarten. She hasn't said what happened to him, so I guess it was all right, but it was kind of. All the not safe toys and options do good.
I ended up giving most of my baby toys to that kind of thing, just sort of pass them on and whatever you told me. Because that's because, we just didn't have the store and choice things.
Jean's sister, her way, they're a little bit older than her, and she has got so many hand-me-downs, clothing, except that
There you go.
Travis is skinny.
Could you,
The boys can't stand
is that, can that go up any higher, or
Can it what?
go up any higher?
like the whole.
It might be at max.
Set and, that good stuff.
They do make pretty good toys nowadays. You can find good wooden toys and
Set it back a little bit.
Yeah, bring it back in the
So
work.
I was gonna do that by good stuff for my grandkids because, we have over $100 in shipping thing. And next year.
I was gonna give it the Peking incident, the violent tale of love and terror.
What were we doing?
Read that?
It's a government issue, so. Nothing special. No bit. kind of just catch up. Last week we did Article 6. Go to the workshops page. So you can see what I've been trying to do is to summarize this. So you guys go read this half with me.
I've done on it 2 or 3 times.
Okay. So this is where we are tonight. But I guess, you know, just in general, hopefully you guys are in concurrence. If you don't think that this captured kind of the essence of what happened, it'd be good to correct these things. So on
Anything you added in the last 2 days, I haven't
no, I
seen.
did all this actually I think I did that the night of the meeting. Went home and did it. I would try to just do it, did that snapshot quickly. So anyway, on Monday is our catch-up meeting that Bill intelligently told us that we should have. So, and I did make quite a few changes to Article 6. I don't know if you went back and read through it and tried to address a couple of the issues that we had come up, but they need to be rediscussed, and we need to finish looking at Article 6. And we never did look at Article 7. So that's what we're going to do on Monday at our catch-up meeting, so that then next Wednesday we'll be back to there we go.
Article 14.
Article 14. So there. So that's what's going on there. Now I have not, for the meeting, under the meeting material, we didn't have anybody submit anything Friday, so we don't have any presentations tonight, nor did they Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. So tonight, what I have not done in Article 14 is not taking the time to
Remember it?
remember it.
I wouldn't bother yet.
That's right. So I didn't do it just for that exact reason, just because I just thought it would become too complicated and I didn't feel like renumbering it too many times. So gives you just a quick snapshot of where it might be. Get back up there. So we'll just start at the top. Bruce is going to kind of lead this discussion tonight. Oops.
You already taken out most of
The standards part, because we applied them to everybody.
yeah, okay, you already cut that out.
I think so.
You haven't, or have you taken the,
Just hang, let's make it to the, then we'll see what's there and not have to guess.
oh, okay.
There. So that's where we're starting tonight. Go, Bruce.
Okay, you're gonna have to start down from there.
Well, this is cover, I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? I mean,
Right,
we're not gonna change who it applies to.
no, not that I have any, as far as I know, we pretty much settled on that.
And so we're still gonna use this home rule standard. Bill, because you've checked these other ones out, could you make sure that 30 MRSA 3001 is still the right home rule standard this week, so we don't have a wrong legal citation?
What page? Is it?
See right on,
Yeah, I see it there.
it's on the,
It's PSA. And I 14.
yeah, there's no changes in the lettering, numbering, and the shit.
You got a copy of it. You figure your number, it's like the third page.
No. Is it the third page?
Oh, that's right. The top-
Applicability?
It's on 1411 right now.
Yes.
The top of, that's very how you're not in 100%. It's
This is
PSA.
Bruce's.
Oh, oh,
No, that's,
yes, I thought this was.
anyway, you can just deal with it later, just go through, you can just actually go through the sound part, and just make sure that these simple regulatory
30
sites.
RSA 3001.
Right.
I got it.
Make sure that's still the home rule authority.
Print it out that way?
Yeah. I think that would, you know,
All right.
And also,
and with your email.
on the state,
Okay,
I don't know why that happened.
you've got a newer version now.
I'm sorry.
on the state revised statutes 35A, 3456, before that, just make sure that there's still the right numbers in the state statutes.
Okay.
Because they change them sometimes. So I just want to make sure that we don't have a problem with that. So are we still okay with this language in the first paragraph? The site approval, operational permit. Obviously, the article and section are going to change.
I didn't see anything wrong with that.
Right. And the rest of it is just other administrative stuff. Too far. Sorry about that. The wrong button.
Application procedure.
Right. So that's still the same submission requirements. Now, this is where we start with you, Bruce, right?
No, actually, the submission requirements, a lot of that is stuff that we moved to number 6. So we've taken care of that already.
Let me move this over a little more. And you know what, probably can, let this one move over. Thought that would move, but it won't.
Maybe move the other corner.
Well, that's as wide as that part goes. That's why I want to get a little bit more modern computer that works instead of this little netbook. So that's,
You don't think-
right, so you're right, so Bruce, that stuff is all stuff that we put in the article, the other articles.
We left a few things, but you've already taken care of that.
Right.
Next section would be the participating process.
Well, you're gonna have to go back to this because we sold the decommissioning and site restoration plan isn't gonna apply to everything.
You left that in this section.
Right, that's why I'm here right now.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll have to come back and address that. So where do you want to start then, Bruce? Because
Well, I've been working down, starting with the additional specific environmental impact statement, G.
okay. So on this right here, we have to go back and review A through F, or
Yeah,
let's
well,
C through
remember,
F.
D is completely out of it,
Right.
because that was the,
Well, I just want to make sure it doesn't get forgotten.
okay.
So you're going to go ahead and start off on the current G.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. The first part of it, first paragraph, you're gonna have to decide whether or not to change it to specific, probably comprehensive impact signals, or do you wanna leave it as environmental impact, which is more accurate in the sense here? Because it refers back to Article 6, what used to be environmental impact statement, it's now the comprehensive impact statement.
Right, so that's probably G will have to be changed to the comprehensive impact statement.
Right, as both the title and the reference back.
Okay?
Okay, now, moving down to the next paragraph, the pre-development ambient sound and predictive modeling study. You don't have my printout on there, or do you? No, you don't. Okay.
Do you want to hook it up to yours and bring it up?
Can.
Yeah, probably be,
Yeah, because we're all operating from.
yeah, we're using,
Okay, please work when I plug it in.
Well, you'll have to just hit the little button on top probably. There it goes.
Hey, okay. The first change I'm looking at, and I'm basing this somewhat, well, actually, I'm basing it on several things, but if you take a look, we did say at least a 2-season sound study. And then the board may require a 4-season sound study. I deleted both of those. And as you can see, I wrote down the rationale for change and give you a little more explanation. But our own experience from the sound studies that were done, and indicated in various other sound studies, including if anybody read the report Hessler wrote for Minnesota. Really, the only sound study that counts is the one during the quiet season, with no leaves on the trees. The others are all going to be higher. So it becomes the defining sound study. All the others are basically a waste of time.
So when you say higher, like, define exactly what you mean by higher.
They'll have higher background ambient sound.
So it would be the noisiest. The environmental noise will be greatest during the seasons when the leaves will be on the trees. Is that what you're
Right,
saying?
leaves on the trees, insects. He goes through, basically he recommends, and it makes sense if you think about it, the only thing you're interested in is setting that low background sound level. The only time you're going to get an accurate, or the lowest of that, for that study, is when the leaves are off the trees, no insects, and of course when there's no storms or anything else, but that's where the
No
sound
insects, no
study
frogs,
is.
etc.
So a study that you take, like the one we had done, I'm trying to think of the exact date now, was it in the spring or the summer or whatever? All those figures were way higher. It tells us nothing about compliance. In fact, the real question is whether you want to even require 2, or if really all you need is 1.
well, we always said that your air, you always take the highest level, or,
Well, in this case, for the background sound, the lowest level.
right,
So the real question is, do you even still want to require 2? Because the second one, as I made a note here, the second study will always show higher ambient sound levels and is most useful, actually only useful, for showing the range of ambient sound.
I think we ought to leave it in just so we can have it.
Okay.
Somebody's gonna ask why, I understand what you're saying, but,
Yeah, it's really a waste for the developer, and it tells us nothing, at least as far as compliance is concerned.
So if we're only going to require 2, would we?
Well, we're still going to require 1 with leaves off, quietest time of the year.
Right. So I mean, I'm agreeing that obviously we're going to do the one when the environmental noise is the quietest. But my question is, how or what criteria would, if we were going to require 2, what criteria would we use to decide whether it should be spring, summer, or fall? Or whatever the other dates are.
Well, that's just it. It really isn't a whole lot of use. I would say a period when leaves are on the trees, so you have that range. Other than that, the second one is, why have it at all?
The other thing is, the issue was brought up that if everything was frozen, that it would be weighted towards high frequency sounds and wouldn't necessarily account for low frequency sounds.
That's when you're talking about the predictive. This isn't for the predictive, this is for the background study. Background sound.
Okay, well, all right, so to change the question a little bit, I mean, I know what you're saying. And what about low frequency sound environmental noise. I mean, is that even discussed anywhere?
No, because, well, actually it is. Now, did anybody read Hessler's report?
Break through it.
Okay. What Hessler came up with, and I have to agree with him, and I've got some other things here I can show some of it, is that in effect, it's next to impossible to even measure the low frequency sound accurately
For the environmental sound?
for the environmental sound, even for the wind turbines themselves. It's extremely difficult to impossible to accurately measure them. And to give you an idea, I brought something to do a demonstration. And the reason why. What he is claiming is, in effect, that the problem is wind noise of even a small wind going across the noise meter gives you a high dBc or even lower frequencies if you were measuring for it reading. In fact, I will put up another report here in a minute just showing just how much natural low frequency sound there is. Okay, this sound meter, this is what Hessler is talking about. If everyone would be quiet for just a second, we'll get a sound reading, first with dBA. Okay, it pretty well stabilized, and I had like 45, roughly 45 dBA. Now, we're going to go for dBc. It's roughly 50 in the room this time. Okay, I can't really have wind in here, although I actually went out with the wind at home and tried this at home. I wanted to see what his results were. But the easiest way I can simulate it is, first get it ready. Reading 75.7 just from that much motion of air across the windscreen
That's dBc.
in dBc. The problem comes, even the requirements to measure it, if, as Hessler explains it in that report, if you were measuring conventional power plants, they measure when it's as quiet as possible to measure what the sound is coming from a conventional power plant or an industrial. It's specified, basically calm conditions. It's next to impossible to get calm conditions at a wind farm at the same time that they're actually having enough wind to operate. And he's got a whole section in that report showing his dBc readings at the wind farm that he was measuring it at, and at a location several miles away. And if you looked at the report, they're almost identical, which means most of the sound that was being measured was the wind sound across the measuring instrument. It wasn't the wind farm. And if you remember in his own report, when he was required, he said the problem with our standard, when we had a standard for dBc, wasn't that the standard itself might not be okay, but it was probably going to be impossible to measure. And I've got another report here which shows up some of this problem. Okay.
Well, if we were gonna do like what you're suggesting, either one or two studies, would we be able to And I think it'd be important to reference the study, or more than one study.
Yeah, we
Indicate
can,
what
but
you
again,
just
there's
said.
really only one that's really important.
Well, no. Reference the study, a couple of these studies that you're about to show us
Oh, okay.
as to the rationale, so that it's really specific, so that somebody can go and look it up for themselves, so it's not just taken
You're
on
essentially
faith. Footnoting the ordinance.
Yeah.
Correct, good, thank you.
Can I ask a question? Bruce, you measured 75 dBc with this, moving it through the wind, and you measured 45 dBA, so,
And at 50 dBc without moving it.
so
So it
if,
went up 25 dBs on the C scale,
so with,
just with that movement.
with no noise in this room, it violates the Clifton land use ordinance as it is.
Yeah, that is one of the problems of even measuring dBc, is that the background levels that most people don't even hear are amazing. And in fact, this report right here, see if I can quickly come down
When
to,
you were quiet on my iPhone decibel meter that I downloaded that app, it was like 52, so
yeah.
it's pretty close. I have no idea whether
Now,
it's DBC or
this-
DBA, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah, this is a
dBc.
class 2 instrument, which is supposedly within 1 dB, although it hasn't been recalibrated. And I've had it a couple of years.
This is the iPhone app, it must be right, Apple did it.
This here is a measurement of what is similar also. They're talking about infrasound, which is the other big thing that everybody has been complaining about. And just to give you an idea, oh, I was looking for a certain chart on this one. Oh, this is the method used in the IEC method for measuring sound power. This is how the microphone is mounted. And even it gives you large dBc readings. If you read this whole report, we can't spend the time to read the whole thing. This is the standard mounting for the IEC method of measuring the sound power. These are mounted at a certain distance from the turbine.
Can you arrow down just a hair, please?
Yep.
Whoops.
Okay.
Oh, see, same problem with me.
It's really touchy. IEC 61400-11. And as Hessler mentions, the only thing that this standard really does is allow them to measure the power level of the turbine. That's really all it really does. It's a standard method. That's where the manufacturer comes up with those dBA readings. This is how they mount the microphones. Notice there's 2 windscreens. And the sound level is still...
That chart you had above it or below it, did it show a difference between, because it says optional secondary windscreen, did it show the differences between with and without the windscreen?
No. No, that had to do with showing actual measurements of, okay, that's audible.
I was just curious if the windscreen
Yeah.
made a difference, the secondary, the optional
No,
one.
it was not for that. But this is how the standard method for measuring super low frequencies is, not this second one. They bury the microphone
Oh, in the soil,
in the soil,
how far down?
half a meter. And even it has some contamination, but that's how they get rid of most of the wind contamination. And also
This is for the low frequency sound, right?
for the really low frequency sound. When you're talking about probably from 100 down to 0.
So,
You can't hear any, well, you can hear the stuff from 100 down to about 30 is usually considered the lowest that a young adult can hear.
So if you were outside in a quiet environment, and you were looking with your meter at a dBA, it's gonna be at least 45, just with what we perceive to be no noise?
Probably picking up some noise off that projector.
Oh yeah, we're picking up noise from these things here. This room, I would consider a fairly quiet room, measured at 45 dBA. If I go outside of my house and I wait for no cars to be going by on the road, I can get it down to about 30. Other than that, there's enough noise just from little things that are going on around. It's amazing how much. Supposedly a really quiet night in some areas can get down in the 20s. Rare. That's the honest answer. But anyway, this is how they measure the really low frequencies.
Should we be having standard like this?
That's what we will be talking about a little later when we're talking about low frequency. And just to give you an idea, there's something here called dBg. I'll have to bring up a different, but dBg is a measure of strictly the super low frequencies. In fact, if you look at this chart, notice it goes from, this particular chart is showing the human hearing. The green line is what you can hear if you're listening to these super low frequencies. What it amounts to is, you ever stood in front of a loudspeaker at when you were in high school at a dance or something, and you could feel the bass?
Yeah.
That's pretty much what is happening at these sound levels, at these low frequencies. Your inner ear does not hear these frequencies. At a certain point, you're literally, it's vibrating you. But notice the dB levels.
Pretty high, 80.
From
130.
80 at 20 and rising steadily to where down in the 1 hertz range, it has to be 130 decibels before you can perceive it. Technically, there's some question there about when you're perceiving it, whether you're hearing it at all. Okay. Natural sound levels, just to give you an idea, because unfortunately a lot of this goes on, is applicable to other points. They were measuring these at the really low frequencies, because infrasound and low frequency sound has been one of the discussion points with turbines. Whoops. Here are the actual sound levels measured using, using that microphone buried in the ground at these really low frequencies, and these are the actual dBg, well actually the actual measurements at those individual bands or frequencies. Notice they did what it says inside chamber, it's buried in the ground, outside chamber is one of those set on the ground. These were done for actual wind turbines. And notice how close they are to the wind turbines when they're measuring these as well. 85 meters, less, what's that? About 260, 270 feet. 185 meters, and then 360 meters. You notice that the sound levels go down relatively slowly. That's because the low frequency sound does propagate. But notice the relatively low levels compared to what is perceivable.
So basically in the last chart, if you were 1,000 feet away,
It would probably
some
go
people
down.
might perceive a 1 hertz sound.
It's got to be 130 decibels for most people to hear it.
No, it's got to be on table 7. It's
Yeah.
got to be 70.
Well, that's the actual measured levels. Okay,
Oh,
let me
oh,
come
okay.
down here, and here are the measured levels versus the levels supposedly that you can perceive.
So you can't,
So you're saying that the gold is what you can perceive or hear, right?
Yes,
Okay, and those other 3 charts are at the 3 different distances.
yes.
So you're saying that you wouldn't be able to perceive or hear because the sound power is too low, is what you're telling us on that chart.
That's right. On top of that, you're getting all kinds of things. In fact, one of the studies I put in was the Rand Ambrose study, which claims that they are affected by these sound levels. although they're actually fairly close to the turbines in that case.
They're practically in the bedroom.
Yeah. But what actually appears to be happening, and this is something, I don't think there's any way you can predict ahead of time, supposedly it was louder inside the house than out.
So the house was.
The house is resonating.
Yeah.
Some part of that house's construction is resonating.
But that would
Getting a
mean
tuning fork.
Yeah, exactly,
you'd have
with
to
some frequency.
be inside, that would be inside that distance though.
Yes, and that he was at, I think it was about 1,200 or 1,500 feet. Yeah, it was relatively close. So again, distance reduces this. There's a lot of controversy still over these low frequencies and whether or not they actually are bothering or not.
So to go back just to the wind turbine, so I can make sure I understand, what was the sound power? The gold is the hearing,
Yep.
the other lines below are what were measured. And what was the actual, I guess, the power at the point of generation?
At the point of generation, I've got to dig up, I think it's in a different file, but all the way down close to 1 hertz, it actually approaches like 93 decibels if it's measured close to the turbine. The actual power supposedly generated at the turbine is like 93, and it tapers off.
And right, and it would be probably different powers at different frequencies, and you'd have to be, at the correct distance away from the point of generation to hit the sine wave at the right time. Like if you were inside the first sine wave to calculate the power, you wouldn't necessarily even hear it.
Well, those are averaged, so that's
Right.
where you get it. That's where this really starts getting complicated, because the one characteristic of wind turbines that is different than most other things is how much they vary. All of these sound levels are basically averaged over some time period.
These distances are also over flat ground, or?
It's flat in Minnesota, if that's what.
This one wasn't Minnesota, this was in Australia.
Okay.
It's not like a hill, a distance like Turbine Hill, the measuring instrument on another hill, whereas it's.
No, there's some
Over
sort of ground between them. I think there's a chart a little bit lower that actually shows this one. But here's another thing. Okay, they're also showing here how measurement inside a room versus outside. You can see at some points the sound level. This is one thing with these super low frequencies. The sounds we normally hear, they normally figure at least a 15 dBA reduction in sound just going inside and closing the door. At these super low frequencies, the sound does just pass through those
Up a
constructions.
little bit. How far away are those? Is that long?
Okay, I'd have to spend time running. Let's
What?
see. This residence,
1,200 meters, that's 3,600 feet. Maybe 4,000 feet.
1, 2, 3, 6.
3,800 feet, maybe.
Yeah. But
So go back up again. So the book breaks up. It says, go down to here. So. .51 dBg.
DBG is another measurement we've never talked about before. It's only the low frequencies, and I do have a thing here that shows what it.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, so keep coming down a little bit.
Now, here's what is significant about the 51 dBg. And this is probably an average figure. If you look through the literature, there is one researcher at one place at this time, a Dr. Alex Salt, who claims that people are actually more sensitive to these low frequencies. And he claims you're not hearing it with your inner ear, you're hearing it with your outer ear. Okay, at this point in time, a lot of people are arguing about whether his hypothesis is even correct. But the one thing about his entire hypothesis is the dBg level has to be at least 65 dBg for this effect to occur. So here you are at 3,900 feet, you're down to 51 of an actual measurement. So again,
So even if you were gonna regulate the DVG, you'd only be regulating DVG at 65 and up.
that would be the recommendation.
That would be the most conservative. So the controversial, the single controversial author's lowest power is 65.
That's where he claims to stack, that some people can actually, they don't really
Right,
hear it, but supposedly this is what triggers their waking up in the night, the things that Ambrose and Rand talked about.
Nausea.
The nausea. Basically, he's claiming that it's, okay, you'd have to read the whole study, we don't have time to go into it.
Right, but I think that the summation though is the
If
single,
you're out
the
at
single,
3,000 feet.
if you were trying to be the most conservative, the singular author who is controversial indicates that 65 decibels G is the lowest possible range where there might be harm to the human ear, and that's even in dispute. But if you wanted to just assume he was correct,
Mhm.
if you regulated at 65 G, that's the most conservative literature available.
That's the recommendation, yes, in some of the.
Are we gonna add DVG?
I'm not advocating we do, I'm saying if you did,
Yeah.
and you did that, you would be accepting the most conservative safest from the single person who thinks that's true.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't regulate it lower than
Yeah,
that,
I
that's
keep
my
it.
point.
Yes. We switched cars today because mine's got better snow tires than hers has. She didn't know I had a key and to get in the house. Sorry. Yes, the most conservative is 65. So the real question is, we're doing this low frequency sound, if we're going to put in standard. The consensus is now that the DBC was based on, recommendations was based on old research. The old research was based on a lot of, World Health Organization research, but that was based on conventional power plants, not on wind turbines. They basically came out with a couple of things, well, we don't know, so this is the way we're going to go at it. There's more research since then saying that this is probably an inappropriate method of determining low frequency as being a problem. Anybody following me?
Yeah, I am.
And if we're going to regulate it at low frequencies, we should be looking either at DBG or at what's called just dB, no weighting at all. Meaning you're not playing around with levels and adjusting them up and down.
It's an average.
No, it is the absolute level. There's no changing it, it's what it is.
That's what you hear.
It's what, well, it's not what you hear. dBA is pretty close to what you hear.
Right.
DBC
It's low frequency.
adds in a bunch of low frequencies, but somewhere around 10 hertz it goes like this. I've got a chart here that shows the differences. DBG looks like a pyramid. It rounds it off at the low end and it rounds it off fast at the high end. It doesn't even cover anything above 30. But if you go with just straight dB, with no letter after it, that is the power level. No playing with the numbers, no adjusting. But to give you another idea, when people are talking about these low frequencies being a problem, here are natural sources, which is why I've got half a dozen studies that basically say, you don't need to be worrying about this anyway.
So what are the natural sources?
Okay, let me find it. Down a little further. Beach. One of the largest natural sounds of sources of infrasound is the ocean. Total DBG level, 25 meters from high water mark at the ocean is 75. Most people find ocean sounds to be relaxing, and it's actually the low frequency components that are
Excuse me.
lulling you.
So they're saying maybe close to 800 feet from the coast, that you could get potentially 69.
Which is still higher than what a wind turbine puts out.
At the same distance?
The wind turbine was actually a little further away, I think it was at 360 meters, wasn't it? I'd have to go back down. But this gives you an idea of how loud natural sources are, and why a lot of this is really questionable. Getting a feeling for how complicated it is.
Actually, it's not that complicated, but
Well, I mean, but trying to separate the fact from the fiction and the sphere from the, 8 kilometers from the coast, you're still 57 dBg. These are just natural sources of low frequencies that are, they're from wind movements, they're from, you know,
that'd probably be related to the undulation of the waves, and obviously it would depend on whether you were in like the coast in Florida during a storm or not during a storm, because of the sandy subsoil versus Maine where it hit the rocks.
yeah, but notice that's 8 kilometers in, it's still
No, I realize
57.
that, but you're gonna have